Okay, good night, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our marathon Wednesday night Daf Yomi, as we will learn Tu Blat tonight, getting ready for Yom Tov. That's very necessary, as we know. This way on Yom Tov, we don't have to learn more than Tu Blat. We are co-sponsored by Shelley Zeitlin, for Shalem for Moshe Meir ben Esther Fadl, for the schus of his children, Eli, Orit, and Ora. We're co-sponsored Lila Nishmas David ben Chaim, for Shalem for Eli Yom Moshe ben Chayesor, Yaakov ben Bas Yaleah, for the schus of Avram ben Yom Benish ben Malki Yudis and family, and co-sponsored by Eddie Chazan, for Shalema for Yedidya ben Penina, Shoshana bas Penina, Simone bas Rachel. They should have a refuah Shalema b'seich Sharchel Yisrael. And we learn also from my Shver Avigdor Aryeh ben Rivka. He should have a refuah Shalema b'seich Sharchel Yisrael. We are going to start from the Mishnah on Daf Zayin Amid Beis. Nishmat, the Mishnah says, Nishmat habarzel mikatoi. If the somebody is chopping with an axe and the blade flies off the handle, v'harak. So that's who would be doing that. And we want to welcome in Danny Vogel. Wow, it's wonderful to have you, Danny. It's certainly tremendous to have you join us. And hold on, I'm saying share here, shush, here, shush here.
It's good to be here. It's been a little challenging with the yontif and unpacking and everything.
Well, Danny, it's good. It's good to have you, Danny Vogel.
Thank you.
Who has been in my shul 40 years ago. 40 years ago. Anyway, so who would do it? Somebody like Marshall Castle, right? And he's holding an axe, and he chops with the axe, and it flies. The handle flies out of his hand. And the handle flies. The blade flies off the handle, and kills Chatzkel. Rebbe Yomer Eina Geila. Rebbe says that's not a case of exile. The Chachamim Yomer Geila. He does go into exile. Now, Mina Eitzam Isbakeya. Here, Marshall is chopping wood, and a piece of wood flies out from the tree as a projectile and kills Chatzkel. In that case, Rebbe Yomer Geila, Rebbe says that he goes into exile. And the Chacham say he doesn't go into exile. So now, the Gemara says, okay, so let's see what's at stake over here. The question is, how do we learn a pasuk? Tanya, Amalehem Rebbe leChachamim. V'chin nema v'noshal habarzel me'etzai. Does it say that the blade slipped off from its wood, namely from the handle? It doesn't say that. We'll see that he reads it v'nishal, that the axe dislodged something from the tree. It says over here eitz, and it also says eitz later on in the pasuk, where it says the lashon of it says lichroitz eitz, to cut a tree. Now, just like over there, it's talking about a tree, not the handle. It's talking about it's obviously when it says lichroitz eitz, to cut the wood, it means a tree. So over here also, when it says It's talking about the tree that is being chopped. So Rebbe says, when Marshall chops the tree and a projectile flies out from the tree, that's where the case of gullus is. Amar Rav Kiya bar Ashi, Amar Rav, Ushnei Mikra Echad Dorshu. They both expound the same pasuk. V'noshal abarzal menaitz. Rebbe Savar Yesh Aim L'Mesores, the way it's written, and the way it's written, not the Mikra, the way we read it, but the way it's written, it is read Nishal, which means to dislodge. V'Nishal Ksiv. So he learns it V'Nishal Abarzal Menaitz, that the axe dislodged some wood from the tree and it flew out as a projectile. V'Rabbanan Savra Yesh Aim La Mikra, it says V'Noshal Karinan, and it means that the blade slipped off the axe. Says the Gemara, but wait a second, that's not Rebbe's opinion in Shas. V'Rebbe Yesh Aim La Mesiris Svirale. Does Rebbe say that the dominant is the way the words are written and not the way it's read? As we start the top of Ches Amud Aleph, V'Amar Rab Yitzchak bar Yosef Amar Rab Yochanan Rebbe v'Rab Yehuda ben Rayitz u'Bei Shammai v'Rab Shimon v'Rab Akiva Kulu Svirulu. They all hold Yesh Aim L'Mikra. The dominant way is the way it's read, and that in that case it would be V'Nosha. So the Gemara says, well, that's why Rebbe says another reason. In other words, he says, according to those that hold Yesh Aim L'Mesiris, then we'll read it V'Nisha. But v'oid, that's, he said, besides that, it says nemer eitz l'ma'ala v'nemer eitz l'mata, just like over there when it says lichrois eitz, it's talking about cutting the tree. So here when it says v'noshal, it means to dislodge from the tree. So now the Gemara tells us about a following case. Amar Papa, man deshoda pisa l'dikla. Somebody throws a clod of earth at a palm tree. Now you know who somebody is. Our resident somebody, Marshall. Marshall throws.
Barry's here too.
Marshall throws. Yeah, but this is about a clod. Marshall throws a clod of earth. Listen, if you're going to make noise, I'll give you the answers. So anyway, so if Marshall throws a clod of earth at a palm tree, v'aser tamrei, and dates come off, v'azl tamrei, and the date flew into somebody's eye, penetrated his skull, v'katal, and killed him. Banu l'machloikis the Rebbe Rabbanan. This arrives at the machloikis between Rebbe and the Rabbanan. According to Rebbe, just like when you chop and a projectile flies out, you're chayiv. So here also, Marshall will be chayiv gullus. According to Rabbanan, it wouldn't be chayiv gullus. Says Gemara Pshita, isn't that a obvious comparison? Says Gemara, not so obvious. You see, where he chops against the tree and the projectile shoots out, that's surely generated by his initial koyach, by his initial strength. Here, where he throws the clod and the date shoots out, maybe I might think that's only koyach koychai. That's only the strength of its strength, its second generation. Mount the same koyach koychai dummy, and then he wouldn't be exiled. Kamash Blan that it's not. What would be koyach koychai? So what would be koyach koychai? Kigain the shada pisa, where Marshall throws a clod of earth, it hits a twig, it sounds like chad gadya. Kigain the shada pisa, he throws a clod of earth, and it hits a twig, and that twig hit a cluster of dates, v'aser tamrei, which caused a date to go and shoot out, v'aser tamrei v'katrel, and there the date killed someone, that is too removed. It's not considered direct kayak because he hit the twig hit the cluster dislodged the grape, and the date shot out. Chad gad ya. Now, says the Mishnah, Hazarik Evan Rosh Hashanah v'Harak. Barry throws a rock into the Rosh Hashanah and he kills someone. He goes into exile. Now the Gemara is going to want to know why that's not considered b'mezid and we don't execute Barry forthwith and settle the matter once and forever. The Gemara will talk about it. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Eimer, if he throws the rock, and when he threw the rock, nobody was in its path, but Chatzkel walked into it and got killed. If after the rock was released from Barry's hand, Chatzkel stuck his head in the way. He didn't know what was coming, but he stuck his head in the way, and he caught it, and he died. Harizeh potter, and he's potter. We're going to learn that out from a pasuk. Zorak eso even l'chatzeirai. If Barry threw a rock into his own courtyard, v'harag, and Chatzkel was in there and he killed him. If Chatzkel had permission to be in the courtyard, then Gaila, then Barry is exiled. But Bimlav, if he had no permission to be in the courtyard, then ain't a Gaila. He comes with his friend into a forest. That there was permission for both the victim and the assailant to be there. It's only if there was permission. But if Chatzkel had no permission to be in his yard, if it's Barry's courtyard, and Chatzkel had no permission to be there, then Barry is going to be pot. Where is he chayiv? Only, just like chopping wood is optional. You're only chayiv galus if you're engaged in optional activity. That excludes a father who's disciplining his child, or a rebbe who's disciplining his disciple, or shliach bezdin, or an agent of court that's administering punishment. If they kill, since they're doing it b'mitzvah, so they're not going to be chayiv galus. Says the Gemara, we said that if Barry throws a rock into the Rosh Hashanah, he's exiled. But if he throws a rock into the Rosh Hashanah, he should get death sentence. The Rosh Hashanah mezid hu. Amar Shmuel bar Yitzchak b'seiser es kaisloi. He is dismantling a wall, and he causes it to fall on someone. Says Gemara, well, that's also, how can you say that's a shaygeg? He should have looked what's going on. Says the Gemara, b'seiser es kaisloi balayla. He dismantled it in the night. So what? People are out in the night too. Balayla nami balayla in the night also he should have looked what was going on. Says the Gemara, b'seiser es kaisloi la'ashpa. He was dismantling it into the dung heap. So says the Gemara, well, it depends. Hi ashpa eti dami. If people go there, they use it as a bathroom, as an outhouse, then pusheyahu, that's negligence. And if nobody goes there, then onasu, then it's an onas. Either way, he shouldn't get gullus. It's a garbage place that people use as an outhouse in the night because it's private. They don't use it in the day. But some people, if they really got to go, they use it even in the day. So he's not considered grossly negligent because usually people don't go there. But it's not considered an einus nami lo have. It's not considered an einus. Some people happen to go there. So therefore that's why Barry goes into exile. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says that if when Barry throws the stone, nobody was in its path, but Chatzkel walked into it, so then Barry is potter. How do we know this? Tan Rabbanan, it says in the pasuk umotza, and it finds its the lashon of the pasuk is that it finds the friend v'meis. Now matzah means that it was in its path, that it was there from the beginning. Prat lemamtzias atzmai, that excludes somebody that puts his head afterwards into its path. Mikanam Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, if after Barry threw the rock, Chatzkel stuck his head out, potter. So the Gemara says, so you mean that matzah means that it was pre-existing? Remember the matzah made kara mashma? We learned by a stay achuza. The din is that if Shelley sells his ancestral field, he could redeem it afterwards. But he could only redeem it afterwards if he got newfound money. If he has a property at the time that he sold it, and he wants to sell that property in order to redeem it, that he's not allowed to do. Does matzah mean that it's pre-existing? Or raminu matzah, and he finds money to redeem it, prat l'matzui. That excludes pre-existing money that Shelley had all the time. He shouldn't change his mind and sell a field that he had far away to redeem back this field close by, or barah to sell a poor, not so good field and redeem it. It has to be money that comes to him new, not pre-existing money. So you see over here, we're saying that matzah doesn't mean pre-existing. So the Gemara says, well, it all depends on the context. Over here, by Shoigeg, by Golas, we have to look at the context, and over there we have to look at the context. Visiga Yadai means that he now acquired new resources. So matzah also means he finds new resources. Ma'asiga Yadai me'ashta, that it's newfound resources. Af matzah nami me'ashta, it's newfound resources. Hachamim Yanadikra, or matzah dumya diyar, or matzah is similar to the forest. Ma yar midei de'isei me'ikara, a forest is something that was there from before. Af matzah nami midei de'isei me'ikara, Chatzkel's head had to be there from before when Barry released the projectile. Now, says the Gemara, Hazoyrek es Evan, we said that it's only if it was an optional activity and not if it was a father disciplining the child or a Rebbe disciplining his student. Amalei ahu mirabanan l'rava mimayde mechatovas eitzim d'rishus. Who says we're involved in an optional chopping of wood? Dilma mechatovas eitzim the sukkah. Maybe it's chopping wood for a sukkah, or mechatovas eitzim the marach, or chopping wood for the pyre on the mizbeach, which is a mitzvah. And maybe even then, the Torah says that he should go in gullus, even if he was occupied in chopping wood for a sukkah. Amalei, so he says, no, that's not a mitzvah. That's a hechsher mitzvah. You don't have a mitzvah to chop wood for the sukkah. If you already have wood, you don't have to chop wood for the sukkah. If you have wood for the mizbech, you don't have to chop wood. So that's only a hechsher mitzvah. Amalei kevan the matzah chotav lav mitzvah. If you have already wood, there's no mitzvah to chop it. Hashtanami lav mitzvah. Even when you do it, you're not doing the actual mitzvah, but only a hechsher mitzvah. Says the Gemara. Well then, it excludes a father who disciplines his child. We should say that the disciplining of the child, since if you don't need to discipline the child, he's a goody-goody, you don't have to do it. So even when you do it, it shouldn't be part of the mitzvah. If the child is learning and he's cooperating, lav mitzvah, there's no mitzvah to discipline, ashtanami lav mitzvah. So now also it's only a hechsher mitzvah and not part of the mitzvah. So here the Gemara says a very big lesson in Chacham. even if it's a good child, it's important to discipline. This discipline is good for the child's makeup. Hasam afal gav the gomer mitzvah. Even if the child learns, it's still a mitzvah to give him some discipline. Dichsiv yaser bincha, if you rebuke your child, v'nichecha, he will give you comfort. V'yitein madanim l'nafshecha, and he will give delights to your soul. Then the Gemara says the whole kasha from Sukkah and from the Maracha is not a kasha. Hada Amar Rava Lav Mil Suhidi Amrei. The whole kasha doesn't start because it says V'asher Yovoy Esrei Eyu B'yar. If he happens to come into the forest, the Ibay Ayil v'Ibay Loy Ayil. It means an optional activity. If he wants, he could go in. If he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to go in. V'Yisol Gedaitek Mitzvah. But if it's talking about for the Sukkah or for the Maracha, then Misagid Loy Ayil, would it be enough that he doesn't go in? So the Gemara says, so you mean whenever it says Asher, it means something that is optional? That if you want, it's up to you. A man who becomes tamei and doesn't purify himself and goes into the temple is chayiv kares. Says Gemara, does that mean ibay mitma, ibay loy mitma? That it's only in a situation where he had a choice to become tamei or not? But if it's a meis mitzvah that he has to become tamei, then he could go into the temple? Meis mitzvah deloy sagi deloy metame. There's not a choice. He has to become tamei because nobody else to bury the person. Hachanami the potter. He's exempt from chorus if he goes into the mikdash when he's tamei. Says the Gemara, Shani Hasam, it's different over there. The Amar Kra tamei yiyah, that if he's tamei, he shouldn't go into the mikdash. Mikol makam, in any case. Says the Gemara, but that tamei yiyah we use for a different drasha. To include that even a tful yom is a sheni l'tama. That means that he already was toivel and he didn't have hair of shemes, that he also cannot go into the temple. And tumasevai l'rabbis mechus kippurim, that somebody like a zav or a zava or anybody else that's chayiv to bring a carbon, even if he went to the mikveh, if he didn't bring the carbon the next day, he still has residual tumah. He's called the Mechusar Kippurim, that he's not allowed to go into the temple. Rabbis Mechusar Kippurim. So you see clearly over here that tumah yiyah is not extra. We learn it out from the extra word oid tumasavai, that over there, even if it's something that he has to do, like a meis mitzvah, he should still not go into the temple. Some teach this whole discussion on the following teaching. It says, Becharish ubekotzer tishpais. From plowing and harvesting you should rest. Now, it already says that you're not allowed to do work on Shemitah. We don't need this pasuk to tell me you should rest from plowing on Shemitah and harvesting on Shemitah. Shari Kfar Nemar, it already says Sadkoloi Sizra, you shouldn't plant your field. V'karmachaloi Sizmar, and you're not allowed to prune your vineyard. Even plowing on the end of the 6th year, which will benefit the crops during the 7th year, and the Kotzer Shel Shvias are harvesting crops on the 8th year that grew a third during the 7th year, Shiyatzal Matzai Shvias, that those are forbidden. Rabbi Shmuel says, we learned something else from Bechorish v'Kotzer Tishbais. Mach Chorish v'Shus. Just like plowing is optional, Af kotzirishus. So also, what kind of harvesting is forbidden during Shemitah? Optional harvesting. Yotza ksira aimer, that excludes the harvesting of the aimer, shehi mitzvah. Amalei ahura abanul rava, mimai de charisha derishus. Who says it's talking about a plowing that's optional? Dilma charishus aimer, maybe it's talking about the plowing of the aimer, the mitzvah. And it still says we shouldn't do it on Shemitah. Vafilu achiyam rachmana tishbais. So the Gemara says it can't be talking about that because amalei kevan di matzah charish. Since if you found it plowed, einay charish, you don't have to plow it. So that means that it's not a chelik of the etzem mitzvah. It's only a hechsher mitzvah. Lav mitzvah. So Eisvei Ravina L'Rava Yotzav Makos Daf. It excludes a father that disciplines the son. V'Rava Reides Talmidei, and a Rebbe that disciplines his disciple. V'Shliach Bezdin V'Mai Lema Kevan the Ilu Gomer. Since if the son would be a good son, Lav Mitzvah Hashtanami, where you discipline Lav Mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah because it's not a etzem mitzvah. It's only a extra mitzvah because if he's behaving, you don't have to discipline. Says Gemara, no, you should always discipline. Like we quoted the pasuk, Yaser bincha v'yanichecha, rebuke your child and he will give you comfort. V'yiten madanim lanavshecha, and give the lights to your soul. Hadara amarava. Lav milsehi da amrei, it's not comparable. Ksira dumya de charisha, ma charisha motza charish, einay chayreish. You can't say that the ksira is similar to the charisha. You can't say that argument because ma charisha motza charish einay chayreish. By plowing, if you found a plow, you don't have to plow. Af ksira nami motza kaitzer einay kaitzer. If you find it harvested, you don't have to harvest. But that's not true. There's a bad guess here. Hadam Rava la milsi damrei. Ksira dumya de charisha. Ma charisha motza charish einay charish. Just like plowing, if you found it plowed, you don't have to plow. Af katsira nami, so also by the katsira motza kotzer einay kaitzer. If you found it harvested, you don't have to harvest. Now, therefore, it cannot be talking about the ksiras omer of a mitzvah. Because by the omer, even if you found it harvested, you do have a mitzvah to harvest it. Mitzvah, if it's talking about the ksira of a mitzvah, but that's not true that if you find it harvested, you don't have to harvest it. Matzah kotzer ain't a kaitzer. That's not true because mitzvah liktzar lahavi. It's a mitzvah to harvest it and to bring it. So therefore, it's clear that it's not talking to desist on Shemitah from a ktsira of a mitzvah. Okay, I think by now already we could start welcoming in people as we welcome in Shimon Klein and Shelley Zeitlin, Yaakov Warman, Menachem Yemansky, Aaron Swade, Barish Gesserman, Marshall Castle, Barry Cement, Danny Vogel, Chaim Lerner, A.B. Spry, Yisrael Fisher, Dov Salkowitz, Ruvain Shanet, Nachman Chapler, Chaim Kramer, Gedalia Engel, Ilya Shutman, Avram Rezepkowitz, Yitzi Muller. Thank, by the way, Gedalia for doing an excellent job on the Mishnah Yomis. Thank you very much, Gedalia. But that's not a reason to come late to the shir. I'm sorry.
Gedalia, you just can't win around here.
No, you can. If you come on time and keep your mouth shut, maybe it could work out. But
they're still on for us.
Now, okay. Says the new Mishnah on Ches Hamid Beis, Ha'ov Goyla al Yedei Ben a father is exiled if he kills his son, va'ben goyla al yedea of, and a son is exiled if he kills his father. Hakol goylin al yedei Yisrael, everyone is exiled if they kill a yid. V'Yisrael goylin al yedeim, and Yisrael is exiled if he kills, for example, a Kusi or an Evet Kanani. Chutz meger Toshev. We'll see that a ger Toshev, a resident alien, that's somebody that accepted not to worship idolatry. Some say it means that he accepted the 7 Noahide laws, and therefore we allow him to live in Eretz Yisrael. So a ger Toshev is only exiled if he kills another ger Toshev. When the Gemara is going to give us more specific parameters about a ger Toshev. The ger Toshev ain't a goyla el al yedei ger Toshev. He's only exiled if he kills another resident alien. So the Gemara right away says, of goyla yedei ben, a father is exiled if he kills his son. Says the Gemara, Amrit, we learned Yatsa of Amak Esbenai. It excludes a father who hits his son because he's disciplining him. So that's in the course of doing a mitzvah. So then why is he exiled? Says the Gemara, it's talking about the Gomer. It's talking about what the son is learning. Says the Gemara, but Amrit Afal Gav the Gomer mitzvah ka'avid. We said that it's a mitzvah to give him discipline even if he's learning. Says the Gemara, Bishulya de Nagre. It's talking about a carpenter's apprentice, and the father hit him as he was teaching him the trade. Says the Gemara, that's also a mitzvah. Shulya de Nagre chiyusei. It's a chiyusei delamde. He's teaching him a trade, and one of the mitzvahs that a father has is to teach his son a trade. Says the Gemara, no, the Gamerum Nasachrita, he already has a trade. He already knows how to do haircuts. He already has a trade. So therefore, this is not considered a mitzvah, and therefore that's why the father would go into galus. Now, this is a little bit more complicated. Va'ben goyla al yedei ha'av. The son is exiled if he kills his father. Says Gemara, but we learned that the son doesn't go in exile for killing his father. Iver minu maka nefesh. If he hits his soul, prat lamaka aviv. That excludes if he hits his father. If he hits his father, it's more complicated, and exile is not enough to give him a kapara. So why over here does it say that the son is exiled if he kills his father? Amrav Kahana lekasha Rab Shimon harabbanan. Oh, it depends. You see, for hitting a father, the penalty is chenek, is strangulation. So says the Gemara, Rab Shimon de Amar chenek chomer misayev. Rab Shimon, who says strangulation is more severe than beheading. So where do we say galus? By murder, which is beheading. So shigig is sayev nitla kapara. Then a unwitting penalty of beheading is enough galus. But chenek, hitting a father, which is more severe than beheading, shigigas chenek loy nitla kapara, and therefore he holds that the son is not exiled. L'rabbanan dimrei sayev chomer chenek, that beheading is more severe than strangulation. So hayregav b'shageg, where he kills his father b'shageg, which is shigigas sayef, who b'shigigas sayef nitna l'kapara. If even a shkaga of beheading is allows for kapara of ari miklat, then shigigas chenek, which is less severe, should surely allow for kapara, and then he would go to the ari miklat. Rav Amarava says no. When it says prat to a father, it means if a son b'shageg makes a wound in his father. When he makes a wound in his father, so there, I might think that since if he made a wound in his father, b'mezid, he gets the death sentence. I might think that if he makes a wound b'shogeg, he has to go to Hari Mikla. Because I might have thought, Kavan the Mezid Bar Katalu, since if he did it b'mezid, making a wound, he's put to death. So b'shogeg nami ligle, I might think b'shogeg he should go in Galus. Kamash Malan, that he doesn't. Hakil Gailan al Yidei Yisrael. Everybody is exiled for killing a Yid. Hakol Gailan al Yidei Yisrael Lisuyemai. Lisuyei Eved Vikusi. An Eved Kanani and a Kusi, they are go into exile. And this is according to the opinion that the Kusi are Geirei Emasei. Tanina lahad Tanur Rabbanan. Here we learn in the Braisa what the Rabbanan taught. Eved v'kusi, an Eved Kanani, and a Kusi Goyla, v'loike. They are exiled and they get Malkus al Yidei Yisrael for doing something to Yisrael. We'll see that they get exiled if they kill b'shogeg a Yisrael, and they get Malkus if they curse a Yisrael. The Yisrael Goyla v'loike al Yidei Kusi, and the Yid goes into Galus and gets Malkus al Yidei Kusi ve'Eved. If he kills b'shogeg the Kusi and Eved, he goes into Galus, and if he curses, he goes and gets Malkus. So Bishloim Eved v'Kusi Goyla al Yisrael v'loike, the Eved and the Kusi that does it to the Yisrael gets either exile or Malkus. Goyla the Kutle. That's where he kills the Eved or the Kusi b'shogeg. The Loike Delatya, where he curses them, because it says like Sakharesh Cheresh, and we say that Sikalal Cheresh, and that refers to everybody, and therefore he gets Malkus. El Yisrael Goyla v'Loike al Yidei Kusi, but that a Yisrael goes into Galus and is flogged through a Kusi, so Bishleim Goyla, they exiled because of the Kusi, the Kutle, where he kills him. Elaloika, but if he gives Malkus, now the Kusim were not careful with the mitzvahs, so why should he get Malkus for cursing him? Amai Delatya, he curses him, but it says, Nasi ba'amcha lo yisar, a Nasi in your nation you shouldn't curse, and we learned that out ba'amcha, and that applies to cursing anybody. He has to follow in the ways of your nation. But a Kusi is not careful with the mitzvahs, why should there be Malkus? It's talking about where he testified against the Kusi on something that the Kusi would have got Malkus for, and then he was found to be in Dubai. So the Gemara says, the Kavasa Gabi Eved, Shehayed by V'huzam, is it talking about by the Eved, where the Eved gave Eidos, and he was found to be Zaymiman, but an Eved can't give Eidos, Eved bar Eidosu, so we have to get a different case. Al-Amr Ravaka B'Reida Avicha Hacha B'Mayaskinan Kigain Shiko Haka She'en Ba Shava Pruta. He gave a Haka to the Kusi that's not a value of a Pruta. If it was a value of a Pruta, he would have the mitzvah of Eishav Esagzela. But if it's less than a Pruta, then he gets Malkus. The Amr of Ami, Amr of Yeichelin, he ko Haka She'en Ba Shava Pruta. If he gives him a hit that's not a Shava Pruta, like it. And we don't say, but you'll say, but it's not Oisa Maisa Amcha. It only says Oisa Maisa Amcha by Klala, V'lai Makshina Nakala L'Klala, and we don't juxtapose hitting to Klala. Okay, Rabbi, so we're just going to pause a moment over here to change the channel as we are learning tonight two blat, since we are getting ahead for Yom Tiv.